Imagine a young boy growing up in a place that felt both like home and a mystery. Barack Obama was born far from the American heartland, on the Hawaiian island of Oahu. His father, Barack Obama Sr., came from Kenya, a land of vast savannas and bustling cities, while his mother, Ann Dunham, was from Kansas, with a family that believed in the quiet, steady rhythms of Midwestern life. From the very start, Barack's life was a mixture of worlds, cultures, and stories waiting to unfold. Barack spent his earliest years moving between these worlds. On Oahu, he played under palm trees, listening to the waves crash against the shore. His mother taught him that curiosity was a gift, that asking questions about people, places, and history was the key to understanding the world. He learned that knowledge was a bridge between different lives. Yet, the presence of his father was rare, and young Barack felt the tug of absence in ways he could not yet name. School was another adventure. At Punahou, a prestigious school in Honolulu, Barack encountered classmates from all walks of life. He was often the only boy of mixed heritage in the room, a fact that made him both stand out and feel separate. But instead of letting this divide him, Barack learned to observe, to listen, to find common ground among differences. This skill, which would later define his political career, began as a quiet survival strategy. It was in these classrooms and playgrounds that Barack discovered the power of language. Words were more than tools, they were keys to connecting with others, to shaping ideas, and to inspiring action. He loved stories, especially those about heroes who fought for justice and fairness. He admired figures like Abraham Lincoln and Martin Luther King Jr., men whose courage and eloquence changed the course of history. Little did he know that he would one day walk a path that echoed their struggles and triumphs. Barack's teenage years brought new challenges. His parents' marriage ended, and the absence of a father shaped his thoughts about family, responsibility, and identity. Yet, he found guidance in mentors and teachers who recognized his potential. He joined community programs, spent hours debating in school clubs, and even traveled briefly to Indonesia to live with his mother and stepfather. The time abroad opened his eyes to how other cultures worked, how governments and families shaped people's lives, and how inequality often dictated one's destiny. Back in Hawaii, Barack wrestled with questions that many teenagers face, magnified by his unique circumstances. Who was he, truly? Where did he belong? The answers were not easy, and the search itself taught him patience and resilience. He began writing, pouring his thoughts into journals and essays. Writing became a way to understand himself, to examine the complexities of race, culture, and society. It also became the first step toward the public speaking and persuasive skills that would later define him. When Barack entered college, the world seemed both larger and more demanding. He chose to study at Occidental College in Los Angeles, a city that pulsed with energy, opportunity, and tension. He was exposed to ideas about politics, social justice, and the struggles of ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. Los Angeles in the late 80s was a city grappling with racial tension, economic inequality, and the aftermath of social unrest. Barack's experiences there deepened his understanding of how leadership required empathy, intelligence, and courage. Seeking broader perspectives, he transferred to Columbia University in New York City. New York was a world apart from the Hawaiian beaches he had once known. Skyscrapers loomed, subways rumbled endlessly, and millions of people hurried through lives both similar and wildly different from his own. He studied political science, fascinated by the intersections of government, economics, and human behavior. He observed how policy could uplift or oppress, and how leaders could make choices that rippled across generations. During these years, Barack encountered moments of doubt. Could someone like him, someone from a modest, multicultural background, make a difference on a scale he dreamed of? It was a question that lingered in the quiet hours of his dorm room. In the pages of newspapers, and in conversations with friends who challenged him to think critically. Yet, each moment of uncertainty sharpened his focus. He understood that ambition without purpose was empty, and purpose without action was meaningless. After college, Barack sought a path that could connect his ideals with action. He moved to Chicago, a city with a rich history of community organizing and political activism. He began working as a community organizer in neighborhoods struggling with poverty, unemployment, and crime. Here, he listened to residents, learned their stories, and discovered the power of collective effort. He organized meetings, helped neighborhoods advocate for better services, and realized that real change often began quietly, behind the scenes, long before headlines appeared. Chicago taught him lessons about perseverance, compromise, and courage. He learned that leadership was not about seeking applause, but about lifting others, creating opportunities, and standing firm in the face of resistance. These experiences shaped the moral compass that would guide his future career. He saw the gap between those with access to power and those without, and he committed himself to bridging that gap wherever possible. Alongside community work, Barack explored his personal life, developing relationships that would influence him deeply. He met Michelle Robinson, a lawyer with sharp intellect and a warm heart. Their connection was immediate, grounded in shared values, humor, and mutual respect. Michelle challenged him, encouraged him, and reminded him that even the most determined person needed partnership, love, and balance to endure the demands of public life. Their bond would become a cornerstone of his journey. Barack's curiosity and commitment to justice led him to Harvard Law School. At Harvard, he encountered the world of elite academia and rigorous debate. He was not always the loudest voice in the room, but his insights were careful, precise, and persuasive. He rose to prominence as the first African-American president of the Harvard Law Review, a position that brought both recognition and responsibility. The role required him to navigate complex legal debates, lead diverse teams, and communicate effectively to audiences with different perspectives. It was a proving ground for the patience, strategy, and clarity that would define his leadership style. Yet, even in these halls of prestige, Barack never lost sight of the communities he had served in Chicago. He returned frequently to engage with grassroots organizations, understanding that policy was meaningful only when it touched real lives. He continued writing, publishing articles that explored issues of race, law, and society. He was building a foundation, carefully and deliberately, that would allow him to speak to both everyday Americans and national audiences in the future. Upon completing his studies, Barack returned to Chicago and began teaching constitutional law at the University of Chicago. He wanted to equip young lawyers with the tools to think critically, act ethically, and influence the world with integrity. Teaching became a way to reflect, to test ideas, and to inspire others to see the connections between law, justice, and human dignity. At the same time, he maintained a small law practice, focusing on civil rights and public interest cases. During these years, he also began to consider politics seriously. His early experiences as a community organizer, combined with his academic background and understanding of legal structures, convinced him that change on a larger scale required engagement with government. It was a natural extension of his commitment to justice and service. Barack first ran for the Illinois State Senate, a step that seemed modest at the time but would set the stage for greater challenges. His campaigns were not just about winning votes, they were about listening, learning, and articulating a vision for communities that had long been ignored. In the state Senate, Barack quickly established himself as a thoughtful legislator. He focused on health care, education, and ethical reform, always striving to balance principle with practicality. He learned the nuances of negotiation, the importance of coalition building, and the value of persistence. These early political victories were not flashy, but they earned him respect and a reputation for integrity. Throughout this period, Barack continued to write. His memoir, which would later become a bestseller, was more than a personal story. It was a reflection on identity, struggle, and hope. He wrote candidly about the challenges of growing up between worlds, about the pressures of expectation, and about the power of ordinary people to shape history. His words resonated widely, inspiring readers with their honesty and insight. As Barack's life unfolded, it became clear that his journey was not a straight path. It was filled with detours, doubts, and setbacks, yet each experience added depth to his understanding of leadership, community, and responsibility. He learned that true influence required humility, listening, and the courage to take risks even when success was uncertain. By the time he began to contemplate a run for the U.S. Senate, Barack had already lived a life rich with experience, thought, and purpose. He had navigated cultural divides, educated himself at some of the most prestigious institutions, engaged deeply with communities in need, and developed a family life rooted in love and respect. Every chapter of his life seemed to prepare him for the moment when he would step onto the national stage, ready to speak not just for himself, but for a nation searching for hope and leadership. When Barack Obama decided to run for the United States Senate, many people saw it as a natural step in a career that had already been carefully built through years of service and study. Yet for him, it was more than a career move. It was a chance to bring the lessons of his life to a wider stage. He thought about the communities he had worked with in Chicago, about families struggling to make ends meet, and about the young people who needed a sense of possibility in their lives. He understood that a voice in the Senate could carry those experiences to a place where they could influence real change. The campaign was a test of endurance, patience, and courage. Barack traveled across Illinois, often to neighborhoods far removed from the polished offices of politics. He listened to stories of hardship and hope, of frustration with leaders who had promised change and delivered little. He met teachers worried about underfunded schools, parents concerned about rising crime, and workers anxious about jobs disappearing overseas. These encounters reinforced his belief that politics was not an abstract game, it was about people's lives. Barack's speeches became known for their honesty and clarity. He did not rely on empty promises or rhetoric that sounded good but meant little. Instead, he told stories, drew from personal experience, and spoke of values that resonated with everyday Americans. He discussed unity in a way that felt real, not rehearsed, and he connected with people who might have otherwise felt ignored. His message was simple but powerful. Leadership was about service, not ego, and hope was not a dream but a call to action. Winning the Illinois Senate seat was the first major political victory of his adult life, yet Barack approached it with humility. He saw the role as an opportunity to continue learning, to refine his ideas, and to make a tangible difference. In the state Senate, he worked on legislation that improved healthcare access, enhanced early childhood education, and promoted ethics in government. He listened to colleagues across party lines, learning that compromise was not weakness but a necessary part of effective governance. While he gained recognition in Illinois, Barack's ambitions quietly grew. He thought about the United States, a country with a rich history of struggle and triumph, a nation that had always wrestled with its ideals versus its reality. He wanted to contribute to that story. In 2004, he made a bold decision: he would run for the US Senate. At the time, few predicted the impact he would have. Many saw him as a talented young politician, but few imagined the inspiration he would ignite across the nation. The 2004 Democratic National Convention marked a turning point. Standing before thousands of delegates, Barack delivered a speech that captured the attention of the entire country. He spoke about unity, about the idea that America's strength lay in its diversity, and about the promise that every citizen could shape the future. His words were precise, heartfelt, and memorable. Millions watched and listened, inspired not only by what he said, but by the presence of a man who embodied the very ideals he spoke of: intelligence, empathy, and hope. After his election to the US Senate, Barack faced the complexities of national politics. Washington, D.C. was a different world from Chicago or Honolulu. The stakes were higher, the decisions more consequential, and the scrutiny relentless. Yet Barack relied on the skills he had honed over decades, listening deeply, thinking strategically, and speaking with clarity. He worked on legislation that touched healthcare, veterans affairs, and public ethics, always mindful of the people behind the policies. At the same time, Barack continued to reflect on identity, race, and the responsibilities of leadership. As an African American man in a nation still grappling with a legacy of segregation and discrimination, he understood that his presence carried meaning beyond politics. He represented possibility, a reminder that the barriers of the past could be challenged and, in some cases, overcome. This awareness guided him, not as a burden, but as a call to embody principles of justice, equality, and courage. Barack's personal life also continued to grow and evolve. His relationship with Michelle deepened, and together they navigated the pressures of public life while nurturing their daughters, Malia and Sasha. He often reflected on the lessons of his own childhood, on the absence of his father, and on the importance of providing a stable, loving environment for his children. Family, he realized, was not just a refuge but a source of strength, grounding him amidst the turbulence of political life. The decision to run for the presidency was monumental. Many advisors warned of the challenges, the intensity of a national campaign, the scrutiny of the media, the polarization of voters. Yet Barack saw it as the ultimate opportunity to translate years of experience, reflection, and service into action that could shape the country's future. He believed that leadership was a blend of vision, principle, and connection, and he sought to embody that ideal at every stage of the campaign. The campaign itself was grueling. From small-town community centers to large urban arenas, Barack traveled endlessly. He spoke to crowds that were diverse, curious, and sometimes skeptical. He engaged in debates where every word was analyzed, where opponents sought to find weaknesses in both character and policy. Yet he remained consistent. He shared personal stories, discussed the challenges facing ordinary Americans, and articulated a vision that emphasized unity and opportunity. His message struck a chord with millions, igniting a wave of support that crossed age, race, and geographic lines. Barack's journey to the presidency was not only a political achievement but also a cultural moment. For many Americans, his election represented progress, a chance to confront history while embracing possibility. His story, of a boy from Hawaii with a father from Kenya, raised by a mother with Midwestern roots, educated in elite institutions yet grounded in community work, became a symbol of what the nation could aspire to be. It reminded people that identity could be complex, that adversity could be transformed into purpose, and that leadership required both intellect and heart. The transition to the White House brought new responsibilities. Every decision had implications not just for policy, but for the lives of millions. Barack faced economic challenges, international conflicts, and domestic divisions. He relied on careful analysis, counsel from experts, and his own judgment, often balancing competing priorities with an eye toward long-term impact. He also recognized the symbolic power of his presidency, understanding that the example he set could influence social attitudes, inspire civic engagement, and encourage future generations to believe in their potential. Throughout his presidency, Barack emphasized dialogue and collaboration. He sought to bring people together across ideological divides, knowing that enduring solutions required input from multiple perspectives. He addressed issues ranging from healthcare reform to climate change, from military engagement abroad to civil rights at home. He demonstrated that leadership was not about winning applause but about doing what was necessary, even when unpopular, to serve the public good. Barack's ability to communicate remained central to his influence. Speeches, interviews, and written works allowed him to connect with people personally, even as decisions were made in the corridors of power. He told stories, shared values, and reminded the nation of the principles upon which it was founded: equality, freedom, and opportunity. His eloquence was not just a skill but a reflection of his lifelong dedication to learning, observation, and empathy. As his presidency progressed, Barack continued to confront challenges with determination and reflection. He dealt with economic crises, navigated foreign policy tensions, and addressed social inequalities, all while maintaining a vision for progress. He also remained aware of his personal role in history, often reflecting on the lessons of the past and the responsibilities of the present. His leadership demonstrated that progress was often gradual, hard-won, and reliant on both courage and patience. Beyond politics, Barack's story inspired countless individuals to consider their own potential for impact. Students, activists, and ordinary citizens saw in him a model of perseverance, intelligence, and integrity. His journey from a curious boy in Hawaii to the leader of the United States became a testament to the power of education, mentorship, and commitment to community. It reminded people that while circumstances shape us, choices define us, and action rooted in purpose can create lasting change. Even after leaving the presidency, Barack's life continued to be a story of engagement, reflection, and contribution. He wrote memoirs, spoke at universities, supported initiatives focused on leadership and civic engagement, and mentored younger generations. He remained committed to the values that had guided him throughout his life: curiosity, empathy, resilience, and a belief in the potential of people to create a better future. The story of Barack Obama is a reminder that leadership is built over time, shaped by experiences, challenges, and relationships. It is a journey that begins with self-discovery, grows through service to others, and is sustained by the courage to act with integrity. From the beaches of Hawaii to the halls of the White House, from classrooms to community centers, his life reflects a continuous effort to connect, inspire, and lead. For those learning English through his story, there is more than language to absorb. There is a lesson in perseverance, the importance of listening, and the power of words to transform both thought and action. Barack's story invites reflection. How can we engage with our communities? How can we act with integrity in challenging times? How can we use our experiences to create a positive impact in the world? In the end, Barack Obama's life is more than the offices he held or the policies he enacted. It is a story of curiosity, courage, and connection. It is a story that continues to inspire, reminding us that even in the face of obstacles, thoughtful action, empathy, and determination can shape not just a career, but a nation.